Good Monday evening, everybody, and welcome to Charting with Dan. I'm Dan Murrell. Joining me, Lon Harris.
Delighted to be here, Chart, once again with you.
Thank you for charting with me, Lon. We've got a lot to talk about today. We have 2 new members of the $1 Billion Club. It seems to be growing at an exponential rate, Lon.
But at least it's being spread around.
Yes, at least it's being spread around.
A lot of different people get to win.
We're going to go deep into that, actually. I made a graph.
Oh, good.
Spoiler alert. I made a graph. We're also going to talk about The Lion King, had its second weekend. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Quentin Tarantino's biggest opening box office-wise of his career here domestically. We'll look at those numbers and the bits numbers, the butts in the seats numbers.
Of course.
We've got all that stuff for you right here. Looking around the world, we've got some Chinese animation news. So much in this episode, Lon, but let's start here with the domestic numbers for this past weekend. Here in North America, The Lion King in its second weekend, it dropped 60%, Lon, which is a little steeper than we're used to seeing from a family film, but it also opened massively. So 60% is actually close to what Avengers Endgame dropped in its second week. So you do usually see family films hold a little better than The Lion King did. However, it also opened so big that there's going to be a pretty big drop off in its second weekend. So I think next weekend is where we're really going to get the best look at how well is The Lion King going to hold up, because how much of the drop off this weekend was just a drop off from a massive opening weekend.
Yeah, and I mean, we see how long Aladdin sort of stuck around. It didn't stay number one the whole time, but what was it, 9 weeks in the top 5?
It's hung around like crazy.
So if Lion King even has a fraction of that staying power, we'll be seeing it on the list for at least a few more weeks.
I mean, it has already earned over it's earned over $350 million in 10 days. It's already earned more than Aladdin did in its entire theatrical run. So it's doing fine.
Yeah.
It's doing just fine.
Simba's going to be all right.
We just can't quite look at the staying power yet, because those big tumbles, sometimes it's just that there was such a big opening, you can't really read too much into
no one left. Every family already went.
Yeah. It's every person already went. It seems like that's going to be over $1 billion here pretty soon. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the wide release that opened here in North America this weekend, $41 million, which is, there's been a lot of talk this summer about movies that aren't opening to expectations or what have you. But I think if you are looking at a win, opening an R-rated Quentin Tarantino movie that is 2 hours and 40 minutes long,
it's long.
A period piece that's set. It is a very. I know that it has been divisive with some audiences. It got a B cinema score, which is, when you're looking at different cinema scores, it's not glowing praise. That's the sign of a split or divided audience somewhat.
It's interesting too that it's so zeroed in and focused on a historical event that I feel like not everybody knows about anymore. That I don't feel like that is an event like First Man, where everybody, like the moon landing. Like, I don't think a lot of people, maybe beyond Charles Manson's a very evil guy, know a lot about the Manson family.
So a very sort of esoteric movie. They say that stars don't open movies now. Some people say that, but I mean, I beg to differ, because Quentin Tarantino's a name brand, obviously, but then you have DiCaprio, you have Brad Pitt, you've got Margot Robbie, they put those names right up front. A good marketing campaign, and it delivered a good opening.
I think you're onto something there, because I saw a lot of stuff over the weekend that was just like, it's about auteurs, it's about directors, it's about giving a director enough time to build up that kind of reputation where they become a brand name and people will go automatically. But I think you also have, I don't know if just Quentin Tarantino's name equals an opening like this. I think Pitt, DiCaprio, Margot Robbie, you're talking about some of the biggest stars that we have.
It was sold as fun. It was sold as comedy, which it has that in it. It's just also a very, it's a movie that I liked a lot, but when people say that they didn't, I understand.
Right.
But the fact that you could open a film like that in the summer, and it gets a movie like The Lion King, obviously not a whole lot of crossover with the audiences there, but that just shows you that audiences will turn out if you can sell a movie, market a movie, and make a movie that they're excited to go see.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a problem we run into now is, do we give people enough time, enough films, enough experience to become the next Quentin Tarantino, or right away, once a filmmaker shows they have promise on the indie level, do we sweep them up and put them into Godzilla 4 so that they never get to that level? I think that we're going to see that in the next 5-10 years. Like, how are we replacing our Quentin Tarantinos?
We'll see. I mean, according to Quentin Tarantino, we'll have to replace him after one more movie.
Yeah, this was the ninth time's the charm for
movie
Quentin,
for Quentin Tarantino. As far as box office money, this was the top opening weekend domestically for a Quentin Tarantino film. Let's look at those top 5. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, number 1, edging out Inglourious Basterds, which was previously his number 1. These are wide opening weekends. Some of his movies opened in limited release, so these are the wide opening weekends.
Yeah, I mean, you can see it's the sort of the second half of the career. Early on, like Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, these movies opened smaller.
And he was still building his name. Django Unchained, number 3, followed by Kill Bill Volume 2. And Kill Bill Volume 1. I always forget that Volume 2 actually opened a little bit stronger than Volume 1 because Volume 1 was a movie that really kind of found its following.
Connected with audiences.
And 6 months after with Kill Bill Volume 2.
Right.
So raw numbers, Once Upon a Time Hollywood takes the crown, but you know what we do on this show, and we got to look at the butts in the seats. Somebody, I was calling it the BIS number, but somebody said call it the bits number, BITS, butts in the seats. So let's look at the bits numbers for Quentin Tarantino.
It is catchier.
This is estimated tickets sold, not money, but tickets sold, and you'll see that Inglourious Basterds sold more tickets in its opening weekend domestically than any other Quentin Tarantino movie, over 5 million tickets. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood still number 2. 4.5 million. Kill Bill Volume 2 at number 3 there, then Django Unchained, and then Kill Bill Volume 1.
Yeah.
Again, this just shows, as far as like sheer numbers of people that went and sat in a movie theater, Inglourious Basterds still number 1, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, number 2, and by a fairly significant margin.
Yeah. Looking at this too, I feel like the length of Hateful Eight really hurt him. Because it's the only movie from this era that's missing off of
Well, The Hateful Eight also was the only other, did not do great in cinema scores. You know, and if you recall, Quentin Tarantino opened it in a very odd pattern, the road show.
Yeah.
I think word kind of got out that it was a little different.
Yes.
A little odd, a little for him. I again, that's a movie that I like. I'm a big fan of late career Quentin Tarantino. I like his earlier films, but I really love the movies that he's done post Grindhouse, post Death Proof.
Right.
But yeah, the question is like, is the same word going to get out on Once Upon a Time in Hollywood that maybe got out on Hateful Eight, or is the star power going to carry it through? Are people going to find what they like and connect to that in the movie? Because it is. There's a lot in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah, I do feel like recreating the late 60s in LA is going to have an innate appeal to audiences more so than another Western. Like, he had just done a Western.
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
Another Western. It's all kind of one area. Like, I think there's an innate interest level in, like, well, Bruce Lee's in this movie. Like, there's guys playing Steve McQueen, and you know, I think that innately appeals to people too.
Well, box office wise, if you're looking at where Once Upon a Time in Hollywood might go from here, which we're going to of course track on the show, every movie except for Kill Bill Volume 2 in those 5 that we looked at all ended up domestically making over $100 million, except for Kill Bill Volume 2, which fell just short at $96 million. So if it follows the Tarantino trajectory, and that's adjusted for inflation, by the way, not raw data, but if you adjust for inflation, they all made over $100 million or would have. So looking at Tarantino's pattern with an opening of this size, it would seem that Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is going to be one of those movies that can do a multiple and go over 100 million, but you never, we'll track it week to week. You never know. It just depends on what's the word on the street. What do people say? Are people going back? Are they telling their friends to go see it? So we'll follow it because it's definitely a very unconventional film. Let's look at the top 5. Again, Spider-Man Far From Home. Number 3 with a $12.4 million. It has passed, if you don't adjust for inflation, unadjusted, it has passed both Spider-Man 3 and Spider-Man Homecoming domestically. And then, Lon, again, since we were looking at the attendance numbers, let's look at the attendance numbers for Spider-Man. I like checking in with this particularly because, you know, this is a franchise that's gone through several iterations now.
2001 was our first Spider-Man?
2002, I believe.
2002,
so I like looking at, you know, just like how many people went to see those movies, how many people are going to see these movies, and how many people went to see the ones before this one. Looking at the attendance number for Spider-Man, this is through 27 days, so this is Spider-Man Far From Home. It's been out for 27 days. Right. This is all of these movies through that length of time.
Okay.
And what we've seen and what continues to hold up is that the Raimi films, and I forgot to switch the posters on Spider-Man 2 and Spider-Man. The last time we did it, Spider-Man 2 actually had the most. But so those 2 posters should be switched.
It's basically the same.
But you know, the Raimi films are still, you know, have a pretty significant lead. But what you're seeing now, I also forgot to replace the poster for Spider-Man. I do a lot of graphics.
Yeah, there's listen.
I got 2 out of those 5 posters right. But the Spider-Man Homecoming, which should be the number 5 movie there, what you're seeing and what we saw as an increase from the couple weeks ago when we looked at these numbers was that lead between 4 and 5 is actually increasing. It was about Spider-Man Far From Home had sold about 6 million tickets more than the number 5 spot last time we looked, and now it's sold about 7.5 million more. So what you're seeing, I think, is that this movie has a little bit of a longer tail than we've seen on some of the other Spider-Man films. That's good news for Sony. That's good news for, by extension, the MCU and Disney as they continue to grow that brand or keep that brand big. So, no, it's not catching up to the Raimi Spider-Man films, but I think it is putting a little more separation attendance-wise between it and the other films in the franchise, showing that this movie is pulling away from the pack a little bit as far as audience interest goes.
I mean, even just the fact that it's building from Homecoming is very good news for them. Like, there's increasing, growing interest in these films rather than what we were seeing with, like, a lot of the films over the summer where it's declining interest from movie to movie.
Well, and I think a sign that this strategy from both Sony and Disney to weave Spider-Man into the fabric of this Marvel Cinematic Universe, a rising tide floats all boats. It is boosting and buoying interest in his standalone and solo movies, which was, part of the whole reason that they did this whole reboot was so that Sony could revitalize that character. Yeah. And that seems to be a strategy that's working.
Yeah, and particularly this time, they got to be the lead-in from Endgame. Like, they're the first new MCU movie since the biggest one ever.
Yeah. So there you go. Spider-Man Far From Home continues to do well, as does just about anything with the Marvel name on it. Finishing out the top 5 were Toy Story 4 and Crawl. They both dropped about 33% from last weekend. Those are both solid holds. I still think that if you're Paramount and you're looking at Crawl, I still think they may be looking at potentially a missed opportunity there because it's hanging around well.
Yeah.
It's showing good drops, and they did not show a whole lot of confidence in that movie.
They did not get the word out before it came out. I think that's one people have been catching up with. Yeah. And like a little bit stronger lead in, I probably would have made some more money.
I think that might have been an opportunity lost potentially with solid reviews. And
they'll still do all right. They'll make it up on.
Oh no, it was low. It's about a $13.5 million budget. They'll be fine. I just think that you might have left an opportunity out there. Let's look at the top per theater. The Lion King holds on to this for the second week in a row at the per theater average, just over $16,000. But close behind at almost $16,000 was a documentary called Honeyland, which was acquired by Neon. It is about a Macedonian beekeeper, which sounds like a very Neon kind of movie.
Another Macedonian beekeeper movie?
Listen, I know, Lon, I can hear you checking out already.
I've got Macedonian beekeeper fatigue.
I know we've had so many movies already this year about Macedonian beekeepers, and I know we don't want to throw another one on the pile, but this one did get a lot of buzz at Sundance. It won several awards at Sundance at the film festival earlier this year, and potentially maybe one to keep an eye on. This time of year is where I like looking at the per theater movies, even if they don't win, the ones that are coming in maybe second place, because we're starting to see some movies that you might want to keep an eye on for awards season. And the documentary race, Honeyland, may be one of those films. If you can sit through yet another iteration of a story about a Macedonian.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, I know.
It's going to end with a sky hive. We've seen it.
There are no original ideas left in Hollywood. We're doing the same ideas over and over. Let's look at the worldwide box office for the past weekend. The Lion King, number 1, of course. It's going to pass, as we sit here today, Lon, it may have passed $1 billion. It's going to pass it probably tomorrow,
any minute
not
now,
today. Any second now, The Lion King is going to pass $1 billion. This was its third weekend in global release. Remember, it got a heads up by releasing in China a week before it did here in North America. It pulled in over $200 million. And then in second place is a movie that was only open in China called, and I'm going to try to, I did my best, I'm going to try to get my pronunciations as well as I can, but Nuzha, which was open only in China. It was the biggest debut for an animated film ever in the Chinese market. It is the first IMAX 3D animated feature in China. Nuzha is a character in Chinese mythology. He's a very popular character in Chinese mythology. I was reading actually the first widescreen animated Chinese film was about Nuzza. So this is a character that is well known in China. And then the director of the film, Yang Yu, who directed the film under the name Jiu Tse, I'm doing my best.
Yeah, you really gave yourself the gauntlet.
I
today,
did.
yeah.
Well, I try to get it right when I can. But very consciously tried to make a film about this character that was rooted in the ancient stories, but brought in some modern themes about fighting prejudice and choosing your fate, which seems to be connecting to the audience, particularly a young audience in China. So. This is a spectacle film.
Yeah,
like I said,
3D
animated
IMAX,
3D IMAX.
yeah.
It was in production for a long time. So this is a movie that we could see, like The Wandering Earth, potentially. Maybe not $700 million. We'll see what the final gross is. But one of those Chinese films that may pop up as we're looking at the grosses and saying like, "Oh wow, this is doing great." That's because it's a big deal in China. And quite the spectacle. So second place in the worldwide chart just from playing in China. Let's look at the rest of the list. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, that's just its North American opening. It actually rolls out almost everywhere in the world next month. So sorry, rest of the world. You've got
watch out for spoilers.
At least 2 or 3 more weeks. Yeah, look out for spoilers before Once Upon a Time in Hollywood opens in your country. Spider-Man Far From Home and Toy Story 4 are at numbers 4 and 5.
I like how the Spider-Man Far From Home and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood posters are like they're looking in the same directions.
They really are. I never noticed
the parody of those two posters.
Yeah, I mean, well, that Spider-Man Far From Home poster is like the international one.
Right, that's the international one.
And it's really not very good.
Nor is the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood
No,
poster.
and I like the artsy one that they did for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, like the one that's hand-drawn, but it didn't look as... It was smaller in the little poster frame. And
that's the official poster that we put up. It's just not.
But I agree. Those are the inferior versions of the posters for both films.
But they both like Margot Robbie, kind of looking over there. Yeah.
There's only one way to market movies, really.
I guess that's it.
3 stars standing next to each other.
Like they all have to be kind of looking in slightly different directions.
Or if it's a Star Wars or a Marvel movie, 47 floating heads.
Just heads looking out.
Heads looking.
Here's like an alien guy right here. Yeah.
Lon, we have, as I mentioned at the top of the show, we have 2 films that passed the $1 billion mark in the last week. 2, Utah.
Give me 2.
2 of them, 2 summer films. One of them was Aladdin. The other one was Spider-Man Far From Home. They become the 40th and 41st members of the $1 billion club. Aladdin is the second live-action Disney remake to make $1 billion, following Beauty and the Beast.
They're not going to get tired of those anytime soon.
Spider-Man Far From Home is the 3rd MCU movie to cross the $1 billion mark this year.
Yeah.
3 Disney films, and remember that Spider-Man Far From Home is not a Disney film, it's a Sony film. 3 Disney films have passed $1 billion this year. Captain Marvel, Avengers Endgame, Aladdin, as we mentioned, it's soon to be 4, if not already, with The Lion King, so that will be 4 films from Disney to pass $1 billion this year. They're just adding people like it's nobody's business.
Well, and they've got more on the way, as we were saying before the show.
Star Wars, Frozen 2, who knows what else could be added, and that's just from Disney.
Right.
But it got me thinking about $1 billion grossers. As I mentioned, right now, sitting here today, there are 41 of them, 41 movies that have grossed $1 billion. How does that break down studio by studio? Well, I don't think I really have to tell you, but let's take a look at the graph that I made. 21 of them come from Disney.
Of course.
21 of the 41 come from Disney. Universal has the second most with 7, followed by Warner Brothers with 4. That would be 5 if you include The Hobbit: Unexpected Journey, which is co-financed with New Line. You'll see WB New Line up there.
I was wondering about that one.
Keeping in mind that Disney has 21 of them, soon to be 22 with The Lion King. They also own the 2 from Fox, which are Avatar, of course, and Star Wars Episode 1.
Sure.
But yeah, if you look at the disparity between which studios have produced the most $1 billion worldwide grossing films, it's not even close to a contest. It's laughably not close. Disney could stop making movies right now, and it would take years for any studio to catch up.
Does Universal have any that aren't Jurassic Park or Fast and Furious? I feel like those 2 combined are probably most, if not all, of Universal. I don't mean to put you on the spot.
I would have to go back. Jurassic Park is one of them. Jurassic World is one of them. The Fate of the Furious is definitely one of them.
I feel like even Furious 7 might be one of them.
I would have to. Honestly, I would have to go back and look.
I don't want to.
Minions is one of them.
Minions. Minions. I forgot Despicable Me is also in there. Yeah,
Minions is definitely one of them. So yeah, Universal, they've got their properties, but it's just looking at the wealth of stuff coming out of Disney.
It's pretty ridiculous.
You
can't touch Disney.
Let's look at the 2019 worldwide box office thus far. Spider-Man jumps up to the number 3 spot, but The Lion King is ascendant. It will soon leap over both Aladdin and Spider-Man to take that slot. If you look at the rest, Disney's got 5 of the top 6, which I think last year I said 6 of the top 5. I was a little punchy. 5 of the top 6 last year for this year with Toy Story 4 in there at the number 6 spot. Depending on how it does internationally and domestically, it could be a $1 billion grosser. So we could be looking at some crazy numbers here. The rest, pretty unchanged, although we have a movie opening that we'll talk about this week, which could potentially jump up into that.
I think so.
That list. You never know.
I feel like it might.
We could be getting some family joining up in there. Let's look at the domestic box office for 2019. This is the North American box office. Disney does have the top 5 domestically, with The Lion King jumping in there. Aladdin at number 5. Spider-Man drops down to number 6. 7, 8, 9, and 10 do not change, but again, there will almost definitely be another movie that jumps into that.
Sorry,
that list
Secret
soon.
Life of Pets 2.
Sorry, Secret Life of Pets 2. Perhaps not long for that list as we get some adrenaline fueled action.
Once Black Superman shows up, that whole list changes. Yeah.
And finally, the summer movie report. We are in the last week of July, Lon, but that means there's a whole month left of the summer movie season. And Toy Story 4, probably for the last week, is at the top. Yeah. The Lion King, I'm almost positive this time next week will be the new number 1 movie of the summer, replacing Toy Story 4, with Aladdin now down at number 3, Spider-Man now down at number 4. And again, depending on how the box office goes this weekend, which there's been a lot of different projections, we'll see. It's possible that we may have a new number 10 if Hobbs & Shaw does extraordinarily well in its opening weekend. If not, I think we're going to see Hobbs & Shaw on that list very soon. Yeah. And then really, as we're looking at the top 10, the ones to watch are probably Rocket Man and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Does the Tarantino's movie have the legs to kind of knock out Rocket Man? And if Hobbs & Shaw is jumping on there too, that could be your 10. But like I said, we have a whole month of August, and August is known for producing sometimes these surprise movies that come in and snag a spot in that summer top 10. So the game is not over by any stretch of the imagination. There's a lot of movies that could come in and just snag one of those slots.
Sixth Sense one of those? I feel like Sixth Sense was one of those late summer surprises.
Sixth Sense was a late summer or early fall movie. Crazy Rich Asians, I believe, was. Was the Meg? I think the Meg might have been.
Sure.
So there's always one year it was We're the Millers came out of nowhere and just snagged one of those spots. It is far from unusual for something to come, because not a whole lot comes out in August. So if a really good movie comes out, Guardians of the Galaxy, use that strategy very effectively.
It's sometimes where studios put like things they put some money and time into, but they're not sure things.
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was one of those. Yeah,
it tends to be where they land.
Yeah, so sometimes you never know. Something might drop in there in August that really bumps up that chart. We won't know that, but we will know this time next week how Fast and Furious presents.
How can a franchise present another movie?
For your edification, Fast and Furious presents Hobbs & Shaw. It's a very formal introduction.
I really hope it opens with like Vin Diesel in a study smoking a pipe with like a bound volume, like reading selections from Hobbs & Shaw.
Yes.
Because you wouldn't have to be on the set with The Rock to do that.
No,
they could film that
exactly.
separately.
It's like, hello, I'd like to present you family.
A reading from the book of Hobbs & Shaw.
Yes. Fast and Furious presents Hobbs & Shaw hits theaters this week.
I'm excited.
There will be a review here on Fandom Entertainment, I believe, on probably Wednesday.
Nice.
But Lon, potentially the big action spectacular of the summer.
I've been waiting all summer for this one.
Have you?
Oh, I love the Fast and Furious movies. Yeah, I'm excited.
Really?
Yeah, I really enjoy them.
I did not know that.
I mean, they're silly, but I think they're fun.
Wow.
Only after like 5 and on. Like, I don't care. The Too Fast, Too Furious does nothing for me. But once they figured out globe-trotting, ridiculous cartoon heist movies, sure, I like that.
I learned something new today. Well, maybe you'll like Hobbs and Shaw. You'll find
hope
out
so.
if we liked it or if I liked it here later this week.
I'm going to check it out this weekend, so I'll let you guys know.
Yeah, but for now, that's all the charts that I've got. Thank you for watching, Lon. Thanks for joining me.
Always a pleasure. Love being here.
And we'll be back next week to talk Hobbs and Shaw, what is almost what is going to be the $1 billion grossing by that time.
Yeah.
The Lion King. We'll look at the summer movie report, all that stuff. Until next time, thanks for watching.